This is Art Sense, a podcast focused on educating and informing listeners about the past, present, and future of art. I'm Craig Gould. On today's episode, I speak with photographer Bonnie Schiffman. Bonnie spent decades specializing in portraits of actors, directors, musicians, and comedians for some of the nation's most popular publications, particularly Rolling Stone magazine. In the episode, she discusses her improvised shooting style, her ability to capture an honest image, her favorite celebrities, and her expansion into NFTs. And now, exploring the Bonnieverse with photographer Bonnie Schiffman. Bonnie Schiffman, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Art Sense podcast. Bonnie, a lot of times with artists, I like to, start with a hypothetical, and that's if you're at a dinner party next to somebody who's never met you before, how do you describe your work to them?
If they're asking about my work?
Yeah, like they don't know who you are. They don't know what it looks like. How do you describe what you do?
I'm a photographer who had such a great time with people. I have a lot of therapists in my family, and I'm a visual therapist. That's kind of how it was. And it started out with a great lunch. I have fun, and people were willing to have a blast. And not everybody, certainly, but I was different from a lot of photographers because since a lot of artists viewed having to be photographed like going to the dentist, it was kind of the same thing. It was different with me, and I think they had a good time.
The years that we really think of as being Bonnie Schiffman's kind of wheelhouse were years at Rolling Stone, right?
Well, and all sorts of other magazines. I started out at Rolling Stone, worked for them a lot, and then, immediately I went to New York and was working for tons of magazines, and that was the best. But it's a great place to start.
Just for the sake of the folks that haven't seen your portfolio, but they'll go there at the end of our conversation, I'm sure. But what names are we talking about?
We're talking about Robin Williams, who I worked with a lot, and we're talking about Whoopi Goldberg. We're talking about Billy Crystal. We're talking about artists. I mean, all sorts of not only artists, but musicians, just tons of people, who were very popular and still are. And a lot of them are gone and are still very popular.
Right, right.
Michael Jackson, I mean, just sort of everybody. It was a great time. There was a lot of talent. And I worked at A&M Records. That was my first job for 3 years. Alpert and Moss, there's a great documentary about them. And, I photographed all these people at A&M as well. So I got around. I photographed business people. When you worked for magazines, it was, I photographed artists, famous business people, politicians, musicians, just the who's who of Hollywood and beyond.
It sounded back there like you kind of had a methodology for breaking the ice with these people. So what did that include?
It included shooting people. Well, you were allowed then, because before like 1990, you could shoot at people's houses and they were pretty comfortable there. You can't do that anymore, and blah, blah, blah. But I would shoot at their houses. We would be outside. We'd shoot at my house, which was amazing. And it kind of was different than going into a studio. I also did have a studio at the beginning, and it just was comfortable, and really having a great lunch was very important.
Right.
To break the ice.
Was there a favorite meal that you would be the go-to to?
No, we just had stuff catered, simple, great stuff.
Give me a background on what the process is for being a portrait photographer like this. Like, where, if you're working for the magazines, were you sent into these situations having an art director give you some sort of opinion on what might work for the shoot? Or was it all improvised? Did the people give you some sort of idea? How would you come to an agreement and what the setup would be?
The setup was whatever happened. And there was I shot Martin Short at my house. And it's like, what are we going to do? We go in the yard, and I had this tree, and I had an avocado tree. And then there was it had like big giant leaves. So it was like, Martin, take off your pants and straddle that leaf. And it's such a great picture. That's what would happen. There was no, it has to be this way, because magazines, you were allowed to be pretty much free. Publicists didn't come with you like they do then. They started to show up, and it wrecked everything. That's when I stopped doing it, because it was awful. It wasn't any fun anymore. So we would just, look around in their house, and it's like, oh my God, let's, it was a Julia Child's house, and she had this giant, like, what is a whisk? I mean, like really long, like, 4 feet long, hanging on her wall. And it was raining out and pouring. It was up kind of near Santa Barbara. She lived in this place with her husband. And it was like, it stopped raining. It got so gorgeous out that it was insane. I've been very lucky that way several times. And she took the whisk off the wall, and we go outside, and she's holding her giant whisk. And it's just such a fabulous photograph. It was just happened. That's how kind of it works. If there were no props. Occasionally, when I started shooting movie posters, that was a whole different story. It was really boring. And, shoot this person doing that. It was easy. But when you went to do magazines, it was just kind of creative. And it wasn't like Annie Leibovitz, who has 6 hours and $50,000 to do a shoot. Sometimes I would have 15 minutes. So it was either you better fucking get it, or it's not good.
Did you know everybody that you were shooting, or did you ever have to do homework on someone to really kind of understand maybe a side of them or a part of their nature so that you could kind of bring that out in the portrait?
I never asked anybody how they were good, what is this person like? Because in a photo shoot, some people, it's like the most disgusting, awful. You would hear the most difficult. And for me, it was like easy. I had a great time with them. So no, I didn't go into that. I didn't want to know if somebody was, you figure that celebrities, it's like going to the dentist to be photographed. And there were a few people, Jim Carrey, who was so fun, and Robin, who was such a blast to be with. Sort of scary, because he had like 2 brains. And, but I went to Thailand, where they did Good Morning Vietnam, and I shot the poster for that. And it was amazing. We just got along. They trust you. I'm a person you can trust. And I don't know why, but I was having a great time. I didn't have to wait on tables. Let's put it that way. Right. It was something I wanted to do. And it started in high school, where my teacher, she was so amazing. She passed away a few years ago, and we were friends up until that time. And it was so joyous that, there was a dark room, and it's like, I had taken art classes and all that. It was like a joke, because I couldn't paint, it was like absurd. But when I saw that image come up in the developer, I screamed. And that was about it. It's like, I got to do this. it was just like, oh my God, you know,
Right. It's
it was
magic.
so fun. It was magic
So where did you grow up, Bonnie?
in Los Angeles.
And so have you always been in a lot? Well, you said New York.
Well, I went to New York to go to see other magazines. A friend of mine who, it was just a weird thing. I got her a job at A&M, and then her friend who was she was the art director, Mary Shanahan at Rolling Stone when it was in San Francisco, and they were just going to go to New York. So she called Lori, whose husband later became a really famous photographer, and she knew everything about photography. It was crazy. And Mary said, Lori, because she's at A&M, could you do some work for us in LA? Because we're leaving and, every photographer. Lori said, sure. So she would be at A&M and she would throw us jobs. So she started like about three of us, and working for Rolling Stone. It was crazy. So it seemed to work out. So I quit A&M after 3 years. And, then I went to New York and saw the magazines and I worked for everybody. So I was just really lucky. And then she became the photo editor at Rolling Stone for like 15 years. And then other magazines and, buddies with Herb Ritz. And, it was really funny because once she was working for at A&M, and people would say, go see Lori Krutokville. She's in LA. Um, people who were photographers. So she called me one night and I was making dinner with a friend. And she said, oh my God, there's this photographer who, she envisioned with a pipe and, a jacket with, the sleeve. And it was Robert Mapplethorpe.
Oh my
They said,
gosh.
go see Lori. And she goes, so she goes to pick him up and he's standing at the top of the thing with leather and all this stuff. And she called me and said, oh my God, I can't take him to a blah, blah, blah restaurant. I said, bring him over. We have lemon chicken and Arlene is here and it'll be great. So she did. She brought him for dinner and but that was, it was crazy. So was really funny.
Sure. Well, it sounds like, the experiences weren't lost on you. It sounds like you understood just how wonderful you had it, right? So,
Oh yeah. I mean, I flunked a test to be a phone operator. I walked and I was very lucky and I loved it. My brother was in the music business. So, I went up and photographed Kenny Loggins was when he was living up in the hills and, with his family. He put those guys, Loggins and Messina together. So that was an intro into the whole thing too.
a lot of the celebrities that you photographed over the years were actors. I mean, they're performers, and obviously they know how to act and perform for you. Did you find it any easier or harder photographing actors? I mean, did you want them to break character, or did you want them to embrace that character?
No, I wanted them to be themselves.
Yeah, I guess that's a part of the question. Were they capable of being themselves, or were they trying to be?
That's what I was good at. I mean, if you look at the pictures, these people are, it's pretty unusual for people to be that relaxed, especially comedians. I think Annie Leibovitz said they're the hardest people to photograph. And I just found them mostly, I love shooting men. Women were much more difficult. And there were a few, women that I worked with who were great, but most of these guys, and I think comedians were, it wasn't about how they looked so much, and having to look perfect. That wasn't their thing.
We are a country that kind of worships celebrity, and I imagine in a lot of ways people would think that yours, was a dream job, but was the reality as glamorous as the fantasy?
No, it's hard. You had to get the shot or you wouldn't work. And that's what I realized later when I looking through all this stuff I've done. It's like certain things I even forgot I photographed. It's like, oh my God, there's so many photos, and there's so many really, really great photos. And I think they're kind of unique to me, and lots of comedians. That was my main thing because I don't know, I was pretty good with them. They were, I don't know, I just had a really great time with them. And women really worried about how they looked. I mean, it was just like, get her out of here. They've been doing makeup for like 5 hours. It's like, just stop. And there were difficult men, two of the most horrible people. One was a lawyer. And it's just like, oh my God, what a nut.
So, I mean, I guess that this was in a day where you wouldn't have been shooting with a digital camera, so you
Yeah,
probably would have been showing them Polaroids that kind of gave them an idea of what was going to be in the frame, right?
that's what we did. We got the Polaroid, then the lighting, and then we just continued. And then sometimes you would just shoot and shoot, and finally you would get to, you know, the shot. And it's like, boom.
And would you know it when you took it? I
Yeah.
mean, you could see it in the frame.
Oh, yeah, you could kind of see it. But, I shot with a Hasselblad a little later, first an Icon, and then I got a Hasselblad because and it destroyed my posture. Looking down at this camera now, but I don't know. It just mostly worked out. Not always, but most of the time it worked out really well.
Sure. And would the majority of your pictures would you get it perfect in frame, or would you have to do a lot of work on the back end, in terms of like
Uh,
cropping to a specific composition, or was that somebody else's job?
there, they finally got to choose, and they didn't always choose the best picture. And then I started, give them 3 pictures instead of 50. I learned that a little later, but Matthew Ralston, Herb Ritz, other photographers said, sorry, I fried the rest of the film.
Oh, yeah, there was an accident. I accidentally opened the camera, and this is what I got
It's
left.
like,
Yeah,
this is what you're getting. You're getting the best of the best. And if there's two, you get two. I didn't do that particularly, but, and then you'd give people, and they, for a cover of a magazine, there were certain requirements, but then there were other pictures that were better, in my opinion,
sure.
just to use now and to sell and to have the best of the best.
I know that I can think of particular things in my life where it's like yesterday. I can remember the particular event. Or is there a particular shoot, a memory that sticks with you?
Well, there's several, but Muhammad Ali sticks with me, and it's one of my very favorite photographs. That's the shoot. It was at his home. He was already fucked up.
Right.
He had Parkinson's and whatever, and he kind of closed his eyes between each shot. His head would go down, and then he would come back. And in this photograph, he was powerful. Every time he
Mm,
would come back to the camera, it was Ali. And it's so beautiful
wow.
because this is who I am. It's just gorgeous.
Sure.
And working with Robin Williams, I mean, it was always, amazing. I have
Right.
so many great pictures of Robin.
So was it hard? Was it hard to harness Robin Williams? How would you control that energy?
You would just be there and go with his energy and photograph him. And we did certain things, but he would just keep going. It was like, it was amazing. From the first time I shot him outside of Paramount when he was doing Mork and Mindy, that was the first time. And he was so great. he like came out in this kind of overcoat with these dirty kind of pants, and he had this little guy, kind of a rubber little thing sticking out of his pants, and he had a T-shirt on, which was really great. That the Tubes, that was a group on A&M, and they were artists and amazing. So he had this great T-shirt on, and he just did all sorts of things. I mean, it was just, he was amazing. It's like, who is this guy? So we got along really well, and I started photographing him for quite a few years. And, he was tired. He was shooting Morning Vietnam, and we're in Phuket. We weren't in Vietnam, but it was in the jungle. It was my first trip out of the country. And here we are, and it was my birthday. And I'm in the freaking jungle with Robin, who's entertaining people in, the middle of this, and it's hot and it's crazy, but it was amazing. And he did get tired a few times, but what a amazing person. It was so sad when he had passed away. He had to leave the world. He was very sick. And but he was, my favorite, I think. And Betty White was so fabulous.
Betty was a huge animal lover. Did you
Yeah.
photograph her with her
Dog,
animals?
with
Yeah.
my dog. I photographed her a couple times, and she was incredible. I have her as a fairy princess.
Oh my gosh.
And we had to dress her up. There were certain outfits we were proposing, and the outfits are so great. So I have her, and I've never printed them, but I'm going to, as a baseball player, in this fabulous, I mean, it was amazing. And as the fairy princess was beyond incredible. And then I asked her, I don't even remember what it was, but she goes, I won't do that, but I will be a lady of the night, a lady of the evening. And I have her dressed up. It's unbelievable, in like a prostitute outfit. I mean, it's just crazy. So those are amazing. And I've only printed the fairy princess, but the other ones are going to be printed soon, very soon. But you couldn't do that if you were shooting now or past, in the 90s. And it just was like, these publicists would come, and it's like, what are you telling me what to do? Dustin Hoffman came to my studio, and I turned around, and she was a big publicist, his publicist. And I said, why are you saying that he can't do that? And she actually said to me, now there are maybe maybe a magazine cover, maybe an inside story, and I don't want my client to look weird, or, she just didn't get it. So it was like really boring. It's like, I don't need you sitting there telling me what to shoot. I'm not going to do this. It was just, so that was after, I think, the Schwarzenegger movie. What was the movie? It went over $100 million.
Like Total Recall or
So
Terminator.
before that, Terminator. That movie cost so much money, and that's when the publicist said, we have to be there to choose what is photographed because it's too important. And it was just became dull and yucky. And, I shot at the best time, and then it became digital. So we had to shoot the picture that they could use. There wasn't retouching, there wasn't any of that. So the picture had to be right. You wouldn't get the film back for a day or so. And it was like, because you had to like do a test roll with different exposures. So when you got it back, it was like Christmas every
Right.
day. And hopefully there was a shot.
Yeah, I remember back in the days shooting, conventional film, and it was always nerve wracking waiting to see what came back from the lab because
Right.
like you never knew whether you got your f stop or whatever right. I mean, you
Well, we
try.
had that right. That
You
was
know,
my assistant. I had an amazing guy that I worked with, several, but I still see him now after all these years. And, I mean, it's crazy because we did we worked for like 12 years together and pretty wild. But he could just, if there was an electric problem, he would fix it. He made it happen, technically.
so you don't have to name any names, but can you give me an example of a shoot that was just turned into a real struggle?
Well, that one we were doing like the greatest lawyers. Anyway, the guy threw us out of his office. I think he went into he straightened a pile of papers on his desk. And this guy became head of one of the studios, like huge. He threw us out of the office and I was like crying. It's like, you crazy. I mean, so that was really horrible. Oh yeah, I was photographing John Travolta. That was pretty funny. And we were at his house out in, I don't know, wherever he was living out there. It was a gorgeous house. And we were in the house and he's smoking a cigar and I'm shooting and I'm feeling kind of nauseous. And then we go outside and we're in the driveway and I got lovely pictures of him until I said, "Oh my God," and I threw up. I ran over to the side. It was like, I think we're done. It was really awful.
So was it the
Yeah,
cigar smoke, or were you just? Was it a bad? Was it that lunch was bad, or?
I think I was like just getting sick. And we were just, I mean, it was kind of funny. He came out with this big bottle of like Perrier and whatever. He said, "Feel better." I mean, it was really funny. But it was kind of at the end of the shoot. I did get some really nice pictures of him.
So Bonnie, you're releasing NFTs. There is something called the Bonnieverse.
Yeah,
can you kind of explain?
yeah.
Explain.
But Lisa can, who I'm working with, she's here, and I think she should explain
Sure.
NFTs.
And what is Lisa's full name?
Lisa Berman.
Lisa
Berman
Berman.
Art.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Lisa, what can
Lisa.
you can you
Okay.
can you explain what we're doing with the Bonnieverse?
There were 3 or 4 other topics that I thought would be really engaging for your audience, for your listeners, that really set up the foundation of the landscape of what made Bonnie's photography so magical.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that really quickly, and then we're going to go to the Bonnieverse. So,
Okay.
one of the things that that she forgets and is her relationships were really special with these particular people. What she'll talk about, George Burns, but also Billy Crystal. He writes in the foreword to her Rolling Stone book of comedy that she took the best pictures. His favorite pictures of all time are taken by Bonnie, because he talks about the fact that she captured the real person. He wasn't on stage. He didn't have to be a comedian. She's photographed him on top of a car, behind, a curtain, on
With
his
his
horse. And he really talks about that in the essay, in the introduction to her book. And another funny story about this is some of these portraits on some of these comedians, there was this ongoing competition that I don't know whether it was the 3rd or the 4th time that Billy Crystal was at Bonnie's house, which was this fantastic studio. So her favorite portraits were lined up, printed, framed in the hallway. And you could tell if you were her favorite because you had made it to the wall. And he came in, she tells the story. It was maybe the 3rd or 4th time, and he came in, put his arms across, and was harumphing. And she's like, what's the problem? He's like, what do I gotta do? What do I have to do to make it to the wall, the Bonnie's wall? Like, what's the problem? She said, well, you have to take a better picture. Anyway, eventually, obviously, he made it to the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are these endearing relationships that she created with these people, because there was no prefacing. There was no celebrity. There was just 2 people, coming together, and she captured that moment, that with her lens. And then Bonnie, do you want to tell him, and we'll get to the Bonnie verse in a second.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about your, these are also fantastic, the tapes. Because you have to remember when people still had this is still when people had answering machines.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would
right.
have people make answering machine tapes for me.
So like the outgoing message, like,
Yeah,
hey,
given
you
by
reached Bonnie.
Zsa Zsa Gabor
Oh my
or
gosh.
Terry Garr.
Ed McMahon.
I have them. Ed McMahon. Here's Spot. I mean, it was just so I recently had those, digitized. Exactly.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
some funny stuff.
And I think to roll into the Bonnie verse. So I've known Bonnie for about 22 years originally through my gallery Sculpture to Wear in Los Angeles. And then we just connected in regards to her photography and working with her with a few shows and placing pieces in the National Comedy Center. And also,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, Ed, a friend of mine, my daughter's friend who lives in Japan, Edwan, and he's in the business too, of sorts. He's pretty amazing and he wants to be a director. But he said, Bonnie, when he was here visiting, he came over and kind of interviewed me. And he said, you should be doing NFTs. I go, what the hell's an NFT? So he said it. And then Lisa came over and it was like, wait a minute. Why should I be doing these things? But they both, this and this other guy who is the NFT guy,
Right,
said we should be doing this.
Yes, and even before that. So, for example, in 2019, we did a show at Photo LA, and we weren't really certain how it was going to go because Bonnie hadn't showed in that type of arena in many years. And everyone was looking for, the avant-garde photography mixed in with the digitalization. And as it turned out, the booth next to us didn't show up. They were from New York. And of course, the host said, can you please go get some more photographs? So we literally had incredible space. And what happened was, again, we had no indication of how it would be received, her work. And we were literally busy from the second that the doors opened until
people
the end.
Loved the show.
And all ages of people really loved her work. And we actually were able, on a quiet morning, we had a piece, the George Burns piece was acquired by the Greenberg collection, and now that's in the Getty permanent collection. So that was exciting. But even for me, I have a 14, almost a 14-year-old daughter, and what Bonnie's images help connections. They help generations stay connected. So when my daughter was younger, she would look at Robin's pictures and say, Mrs. Doubtfire, or she would look at Gene Wilder and say Willy Wonka, because that was her frame of reference. But there's this connectedness that families would see in her work, and people would stop in front of images and tell stories about the first time they saw that particular actor, or how their family felt about it. It's like looking at these fantastic these family photo albums, some of them, because
these people were incredible. I mean, they still are. I mean, it's Julia Child.
Yeah. I think it says something about like our American culture that, especially the 70s and 80s, I felt like, we became a latchkey kid society. Folks my age, we would be plopped down in front of the television every day, just absorbing these people who wound up being like our family, right? The people off television and the movies. I mean, well, it's part of what made Hollywood, right? I mean, Americans have a fascination with their celebrities and, particularly actors, actresses.
Right.
You're the portrait of Michael Jackson that I saw. I mean, I don't think I've seen another portrait of Michael Jackson where he looks quite as at peace and relaxed as he does in that shoot.
And it was an insane day, and there were like 4 rolls of film. They wanted us to not even do it. It was crazy, but the pictures are really, and they didn't even buy them. they buy everything, but for some reason there were just a few rolls of film. So I walked out one day and it was on there was a red striped t-shirt and a blue striped t-shirt that my friend brought.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on like 5 magazine covers. It was so crazy. I said, we have to do this shoot. It's a cover. We got to do it. So they said, okay, you have 15 minutes or whatever.
But it was a contentious day, and the fact that I think it was the day
they were firing his manager, but it was just crazy, the whole thing. That was one crazy day.
Right. Well, so I think the theme here is there's never been a dull moment, right?
No. Fun then. I don't know. I'm so lucky to have gotten to do this as a job. I mean, it's crazy. And when I left A&M, and my friend Lori was still working there, the next week, she hired me to go do a shoot on the beach. There was a group called Pablo Cruz on A&M. So I went to the beach. We were there for maybe 2 hours. The next day, we delivered the film. And it was like, I think I made $300. Well, that's what I made all week. So it was like $300 for a shoot on the beach, bring the film in, stay for 10 minutes, or work somewhere all week. And that was like, what do you do? I mean, please.
When I was looking at your site and I was looking at the NFTs that are available on OpenSea, I saw pictures from Raising Arizona, which was like one of my top 2 or 3 favorite movies ever, right? And, it was really amazing to see that you were obviously on set shooting them in costume, in character, which is just like for someone who loves the Coen brothers and loves that movie and those characters. It's just that's a real treasure.
Yeah, I heard his movie is great, the Nick Cage film.
Right, Nicolas Cage is Nick Cage in Nick Cage, right?
Well, that was a fantastically fun. Oh my God! And Holly Hunter, they were just fabulous.
And I think that rolls into your question about. I'm going to jump in about the NFTs and. I've had the honor and privilege to know Bonnie for this many years, but and have had looked through, some negatives and prints that no one's ever seen. They've never been published, but it wasn't until she moved from one house to this new location that she started to really delve into her archives. And it is
Thanks
literally
to Lisa. We delved.
Thank you, Lisa.
I dove. It literally is. Sometimes she'll be in another room in the house, and I'll scream, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "How do you have this material? It's insane! Like, how do you have that person in that Polaroid doing that thing? No one has this." And she would come over and say, "Oh yeah, I did that, 30 years ago." Or it's just incredible, the vast amount of material that no one's ever seen, and it's really exciting. It's really cool stuff. So I think that the connectedness with the fact that you feel like you're looking at photo albums because these iconic people and you connect with these movies, but then with these NFTs, we have these Polaroids that no one's ever seen before. I think Bonnie probably forgot about them anyway. We also have these unlockables with some of these voiceovers from these tapes.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. And then also just to try to figure out, who's the audience, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
We all love all of them. I mean, like she was saying, going from architects, actually artists. I mean, there's a party of Andy Warhol's party after one of his exhibitions on the West Coast. And you look at every who's who of art collector and dealer in that that one party. And we have not dropped that yet, by the way.
Right.
The list just goes on and on. It is incredible. So I was lucky enough to meet Jay Huddy and Brandon Martin of Replayer probably 2 years ago. And they are just remarkable. They're remarkable visionaries, marketers. And we finally said after 2 years, this is a great way for us to collaborate. And I think it was, Jay and Brandon came up with this idea after looking at all this material and the enthusiasm. They just said it's the Bonnieverse because you have to have this sketch marketing, and it is really that. It's fun. It's a fun, iconic image. and it shows only, I think, 1% of 1% of everyone that she has photographed. So it's fun. It's an interesting idea, uphill battle with photographers, essentially, with the NFTs. But we're doing some really fun and interesting out of the box marketing with it, and they come up with, pushing the envelope of new ways to introduce work and to gain access to new collectors, with really educating not the millennials, but educating the boomers and the Gen Zs about, what is an NFT? What do you do with it? They hear about it every day. It's not making anyone sick. Some people make a few money from it, and it has to do with art. And it just so happens this particular NFT collection are images they love anyway. So it's all about education. So it's an exciting journey. And the fact is, it's really fun. We have a great team. We go from our 30s to our 70s. So we're kind of an oddball team, and it's fun. It's fun to have this much fun with this group of people.
There are NFTs out there available now on OpenSea. Is
Correct.
that okay? So you're probably not going to drop 6,000 NFTs all at the same time, right? I mean, it's
no. The other thing is, the other really rare element that she has is she has proof sheets. She's got negatives. She's got these Polaroids. No one has these because most people are just creating original artwork. And by the way, what's to note is that all of her NFTs are one of one. There are no additions, where a lot of people have additions with their NFTs. So, one Robin Williams Polaroid, that's it. One Robin Williams particular image, that's it. Roy Rogers, someone just acquired. And so, people, the boomers, they want to have a piece on their wall, a print on the wall, and then also an NFT.
Right.
It's kind of like fragging rights. They have both, best, and as much as they're beginning to understand it. Yes, we will have different themes, anywhere from stars in their cars. And that actually came from a Bonnie's photo shoot with Vanity Fair. Probably was it the 80s or not early 90s. That was a feature article for Vanity Fair. Also,
people with their cards. I mean, it's like,
but they're really great.
Yeah, there's some.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying about the baby boomers, and the sponsor of the podcast is Canvia, and the digital displays that Canvia sells, really makes NFTs more practical and able to get their hands around exactly, oh, well, I get it. I can put it on my wall. I can see it. And then, I can actually rotate from one image to the other all on one frame, right?
It is. And what you just said, that's a key connector. So you've got the visual of the NFT frame and or the actual photograph. And then, of course, the NFT collection that can also just sit on your phone. But having that tangible, I know we're talking about non-tangible or non-tangible tokens, but it really is tangible to Gen Zs and boomers who are looking at it on their phone. That's that connection. So yes, we're definitely having a lot of fun with it. And there's so much material to go through. It's really, that's the most challenging, is figuring out which ones do we mint, what do we drop? So, and that's a great problem to have.
Right. I'm so jealous of you, Lisa, getting to just kind of comb through those archives, because, I mean, it sounds like Bonnie, the interactions became so everyday to her that maybe she doesn't understand the cultural significance of maybe some of the things in there. What an amazing experience would be to uncover those treasures in there.
Yeah, I never really pushed my work, or looked at it like, wow, this stuff's really good. But I got involved with this project called the Museum Project, and a friend of mine was in it, and Robert von Sternberg, who taught photography for 25 years. And when he left, he started this project. He wanted mostly fine art, but he said, you are totally welcome. This is not your job. These are, they're amazing part of history. Anyway, so he was going to do it for a couple of years, and he wound up doing it for several more years. And he's gotten stuff into like 250 museums all over the place, all over the world. And so I have a lot of pictures. I came in really late. I was the last person to come in, but these places just loved the pictures. So, it's like in 50 museums. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
That was a great project. Yeah. And I realized that, wow, these are terrific images and they should be out in the world. That's where I want to just get them out there and sell them and NFT them and whatever else.
Well, you've got a legacy. So, Bonnie, if folks wanted to keep track of the Bonnieverse and your photography, and where's the best place? Is it the website? Is it Instagram? Is it OpenSea? Where are we pointing people to these days, Lisa?
Okay, so yes, it's all of the above. It's BonnieverseNFTs.com. Then you've got on Instagram, Twitter,
and you can go to Bonnie Schiffman Photography,
which is the traditional website,
and
which
it takes you, so you can see like a lot of stuff. Not everything is on there. It hasn't been redone in a while, but that takes you to the Bonnieverse as well.
And what's really important when you visit the Bonnieverse, you will see a lot of added feature benefits that we've added, like the NFTs EDU. It literally will take you step by step about what is an NFT, what is a Coinbase wallet, how do you set this up. We have also created something that's really unique to this. We've taken it a step further, and we actually created the white glove experience. So it's white glove service. And that was another one of Brandon Martin's fantastic ideas, where we literally will we'll take any of those details, extract them from a client, and just walk through this. And it is the ultimate white glove service, which is just included in what we do. It's not anything that we charge extra for. And the other thing is you can also track the Bonnieverse and some of the other things that she's going to be doing. The National Comedy Center has been a good place for her images to be seen. There's a series of her stacked images when you exit the train station. So those are fun. And they just contacted her for a special project with Carl Reiner. And then I'm sure, and then on Netflix, May 18th, you'll see the Netflix special. And it's all about the Hall, which is the new stand-up comedy Hall of Fame that they're building. And I don't want to tell you who's being inducted, but when you watch the special on May 18th, 50% of the inductees are images from Bonnie. Yeah. We're excited.
People I've photographed.
Now, for people she photographed.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, not put
Right.
You'll edit that out.
Yeah. So
it's fun in this crazy day and age. I mean,
yes,
to be doing this.
And the other thing is, if people have particular images that we haven't even thought of, we make it a request, and we can mint that, or things like that. So we are really taking this to the level of white glove service, and we're also having fun with it. I mean, it's a great image. If you look on there, people are just these comedians, these stars, these characters. They're characters, are having a lot of fun with it. That's really what we want people to not be afraid of an NFT. That we want for them to have fun with the whole process. That's what it's about.
Well, Bonnie, Lisa, I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to talk to me and tell me your amazing stories. And I feel like you probably have 5, 6, 7 more hours of amazing stories. And we have visual proof of all of that, right? And, your work kind of speaks for itself. And I encourage people to go check out your work at BonnieSchiffmanPhotography.com and, Bonnieverse NFTs. So thank you guys for being available.
Absolutely. It was fun.
Thank you for letting me be a stage mom.
That's all the time we have for this week. You've been listening to ArtSense. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. And while you're there, please rate the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback is the key to other folks finding us. And if you'd like to see images related to the conversation, read the transcript, and find other bonus features, you can go to cambia.art and click on the podcast tab. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me at craig@cambia.art. Thanks for listening.